there's, it's a proposal from the CBN, but already there's a general sense of discontent about this. Some people saying it's unconstitutional. Why?
Yeah, well, it's not a proposal anymore because on 13th of January this year, the central bank issued a framework for non-interest financial institutions. And the alarming thing about that framework is that the CBN has unconstitutionally and illegally redefined non-interest financial services as Islamic and Sharia banking. And the contention is that the law, the subsisting law for banking in Nigeria, which is the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act of 1991, already makes provision for non-interest banking in the form of profit and loss sharing banks. And what CBN has done is that without being mindful of the existing law, it has redefined non-interest banking as Sharia banking, or non-interest financial services as Sharia compliant financial services. It has also, flouted the Constitution. The Constitution states specifically in Section 16 that no Nigerian shall be excluded from any area of economic activity. So we're not an Islamic state. I already have a provision that allows whether Muslims or non-Muslims to engage in non-interest financial services. So that's what the contention is.
Just explain to us the dynamics in Nigeria without going too much into detail as to what the Constitution says. Why is there a view that non-interest banking and Sharia banking are forces that are diametrically opposed, while we're already saying it excludes non-Muslims?
Yeah, because the central, okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the central bank framework is unmindful of the fact that the banks and other financial institutions already provides for non-interest banking. There is already a situation where we have a bank that wants to do Sharia banking, Jaiz International Bank, which has been issued an approval in principle since about 5, 6 years, 7 years ago. So the issue is that there are non-Muslims who are also interested in doing non-interest financial services. So what CBN has done is that by bringing about this framework, they have illegally excluded other entrepreneurs who are non-Muslims from engaging in an area of business which is not an exclusive preserve of Muslims. You must note that non-interest financial services predated Islam. So this is not really about religion. It's not about whether Muslims have the right to do Islamic banking. It's about the right of non-Muslims to equally do non-interest financial services.
Taking it away from some of the religious overtones, let's talk about the competitiveness of Islamic banking in a country like Nigeria. There's so much going on in the banking space by way of reforms, by way of upcoming mergers and acquisitions. If we introduce this dimension, would Islamic banks be less competitive because of this non-interest element?
What we should note is that non-interest financial services is an alternative form of financing, which is attractive, especially in a developing country like Nigeria. Because one thing about non-interest financial services is that, unlike the credit framework where, an entrepreneur or a business has to be thinking about collateral, and thinking of all kinds of requirements to meet credit benchmarks, a non-interest financial service framework is based upon risk sharing. So if you are an entrepreneur or a business who cannot afford to put any collateral, but you have a viable business, a viable project which is attractive to the financier, you go into a risk sharing arrangement. So it is an attractive area of business and it's actually welcome. So nobody is, I'm personally an advocate for non-interest financial services. So the contention is not about, it's a good development that we are now talking socially about non-interest financial services, but we should not make it a religious issue.
Okay, let's introduce Yusuf Moola to the conversation. From your experience, how would this work in an African context? Not necessarily Nigeria, but we know that it's actually doing quite well, I think, in countries like Kenya, and recently Sharia banking being introduced in a market like South Africa.
Yeah, look, Sharia banking is taking off, and Sharia investment in everything, financial services that's related to Sharia or that Sharia compliant has taken off tremendously across the world, and it includes populations or in countries where the populations are smaller, like South Africa. What I don't actually understand is in South Africa, for example, Sharia banking products are available to Muslims and non-Muslims. So if a person is a non-Muslim and wants to buy a car on a Sharia basis, on a fixed term and a fixed profit sharing ratio, a non-Muslim is also allowed to participate in that way. So a non-Muslim can take a normal conventional loan or a Sharia loan. So it's not against the constitution. So I don't understand how it's going to exclude non-Muslim Nigerians from participating. So if a Nigerian person wants to take a Sharia loan, I'm sure he will be allowed to.
Okay, well, the nuances of Nigeria will leave to Nigeria. Let's talk about what it is that entails Sharia financial services. Those who are proponents argue that it's going to spur the growth of an Islamic money market, new asset management companies and insurance products in that regard. How does that work?
Yeah, look, that is true. In South Africa, we've had Takaful, which is a Sharia compliant or as compliant as possible Sharia insurance, short-term insurance company that is doing excellently over the last few years since they've come into inception. We've got Sharia banking around here for at least 15, 20 years with Al Baraka Bank that started off a Saudi-based bank that's been here for 20 years. And then we've had the big major four, some of them going in, ABSA, in particular, got a big market share in that space. And we got asset managers also going that way. I mean, Oasis was there for many years. We've got myself, Sanlam Private Investments. I head up the Sharia, investments for Sanlam. So, the appetite is there. There's big demand for Sharia products.
What about the limitations, for instance? Some would say that Sharia banks cannot hold conventional treasury bills as we know it. And in a country like Nigeria, where the interbank market is quite active and liquidity issues are at the fore, that would be a real limitation. So just in terms of dynamism, in terms of money market activity.
Yeah, look, money market is outlawed simply because we are not allowed, in Islam, we are not allowed to take interest or give interest. And therefore money markets are not allowed. So, the way around that is, you get sukuks, which are Sharia compliant bonds, which come into play there. So it's a different animal, so to say, but money markets definitely not allowed. And I'm sure there will be an appetite for sukuks in Nigeria, being a country with 50% Muslim population. And
a final comment from you, Mr. Eyieyien, very briefly. Let's assume all of these constitutional issues are ironed out and we see the sprouting of Sharia banks and financial services. How would they be regulated in terms of monetary policy and the transmission of decisions taken by the CBN about interest rates and the like within this Sharia banking framework?
Yeah, Lerato, I think it's important that we get something quite clear. The Nigerian situation is not averse to Islamic banking. The point we are making is that our law, which is the Bank and Other Financial Institutions Act, already provides for non-interest financial services for every investor, whatever your religion is. Now, the issue is that the CBN has, in that law, says that if you have a company that wants to do non-interest financial services, you must state in your memo and articles of association that you will comply with Islamic jurisprudence. It also, why should a non-Muslim who wants to do this business have to write in his memo and articles that he will comply with Islamic jurisprudence? We are advocating that we have a form of non-interest financial services in Nigeria which is not specific to religion, because our BOFIA doesn't even allow you to use the words like Islamic or Quranic or Christian or biblical. It's clear in section 39 of the BOFIA.
Right.
So what CBN is doing is not just unconstitutional, it's also illegal.
Okay.
And they cannot legislate. You cannot use a guideline to obtain a law. They need to go to the National Assembly to get a law to do the kind of non-interest financial services they're advocating.
All right.
It's not fair.
We have to leave it there, unfortunately. Thank you very much, Mr. Eyieyien. Thanks you, Yusuf Moola, for your views on this particular issue. Mr. Eyieyien is the Chief Executive Officer of Pharez Consulting. Mr. Moola is Head of Investments, Sharia Investments at Sanlam.